Okay, I hope you can hear me. And I always have to remember to turn down my speakers just a little bit so it don't blare you out. So, let's see. It should go live in a second. I don't expect a lot of people to show up because the football started tonight. You know how that is. And so I expect quite a few people are going to be up doing that. But hey, give it a shot. I didn't get on Thursday. Hello, Dan. You're the first one. Um, and the Beast of Bray Road. Hello, Gary McAllister. Guns and Watches. Now that one sounds like Guns and Watches. That sounds fun. Dirty Harry. Hello, CK America. Hello, guys from Belfast. Hello, Dirty Harry. How you doing, Bill? You're up kind of late over there, ain't you? Well, it'd be what, 6 or 8 hours behind me, maybe 5. So, anyway, thank y'all for stopping in. I apologize I didn't get to do my live the other night. We had one of those storms blow up from the Gulf, and my wife said she heard a thump, and so we didn't, things come down all the time. And then the next day it rained, and then water got in the kitchen. And so we went up there and we looked on the roof, and I thought it was just going to be a patch it type thing. And so I'm just not in the shape to climb ladders very well anymore. I'm sorry. And so I asked my good friend Roger if he'd come over and give me a hand. He said, sure. He does that kind of work. Yeah. So he got up there and he came back and said, there's a hole. I mean, like the size of a coffee table, a hole. Okay. So that meant going and getting like a half sheet of plywood and all that stuff, much more elaborate. So on Thursday, we were kind of busy doing that. So I apologize, guys, for not doing my live then, but we shall see. Hole in the roof that's what had happened. I had a tree knock a hole in the roof. Okay, let's see if I got any questions going on. Hello to Belfast, Ireland, New York. Hello. 1 a.m. Woo! Thank you for staying up this late. Sierra Nevada mountains. Those are very pretty mountains. Guns and Watches likes my percussion series. Thank you very much. Anthony, Eastern Kentucky. Hello. I hope y'all wasn't part of that flooding up there. Pittsburgh. Been there many times. Briar Smoke. How did you get the nickname Blackie? Okay. I've told this before, but I'll tell it again. My name is Michael Carlton Bianca Lusa Thomas. Bianca Lusa means raven. Okay. And my grandfather on my mother's side, he didn't call starlings, crows, ravens, anything but blackbird. If it was a black color, it's a blackbird. And so instead of calling me Raven, he called me Little Blackbird because I was, infant. And the name kind of stuck. And then by the time I was 3, it had been shortened down to Blackie. And so that's me. I'm Blackie Thomas. Always been Blackie Thomas. So that's where it comes from. It means, Bianca Lusa means raven in Native American dialect. And that's where part of my name is Raven. Have I posted the percussion revolver class? Yes, I did. If I miss you, email me at the site. Email me at the BT online class sign up on Yahoo, and I will get the link to you if I missed you. For those of you that like my percussion revolver series, if you don't go and tell me that you're going to go ahead and pay the site because you know the site, I use that email is where I drop in instead of going to the money, because I've got funds coming in from my bag sales and from other things, and it just all becomes a blur. And so it's just easier for me to keep track of who's getting what thing. Are they getting the Master Woodsman series videos, or are they getting the Percussion Revolver series videos? I use the 2 emails to make lists so I know where to go and drop it into. So that's the easy way to do it. Hello from the Smokies. Have you ever seen a wood booger? No, I have not seen a wood booger. If you're talking about them things that go bump in the night and you're not sure what it is, yeah, I've had some experience. If you're going to be out there in the woods, you're sooner or later going to encounter something you don't know what it was. And I have bumped into things and had things go by in the woods, etc., where I couldn't immediately tell you what it was, but I don't panic. It can be strange things that I've seen in the woods, unexpected. About a 16-foot alligator. It was probably a quarter mile to the big pond, and I guess he or she, quite often reptiles, she's are bigger. It was probably getting close to mating season. She was probably looking for a mate heading down to the river. And I had a camp set up, and it was raining, and in one of the lightning flashes, I saw it, and it was a big, huge alligator walking like a dog coming down the trail, heading to the river. And I was camped out right, on the high bank of the river. So, yeah, you get to see some strange stuff in the middle of nowhere. Just take it step by step and go, don't panic over it. Just hang with it. Pungo, okay. Hello from Thumb of Michigan. You remember, Chris says, I remember Black Oracle. Yeah, Black Oracle was early when I first started my channel, way back in 2008. You had to use an email address. And back in my professional career, when I was a district manager for a company, and I had a secretary, and people back then were just getting emails. And she said, I need to set you up an email. Well, you can tell I'm not a technology person. I'm the one you want with you when we're going out and going to be in the woods and stuff. And I can hunt and peck my way around a computer screen. But newfangled fads weren't my thing. And so she said, I'll set you up an email. Well, Cheryl had this lousy taste in guys, And so on Monday, she'd come in and she's massively in love with this dude. I mean, they have met. It is true love. By Thursday, it's all falling to pieces. And then she'd find a guy that'd last a week or two, and she'd want to ask my opinion. And I'd tell her, you don't want my opinion, because I'm going to give you my honest opinion. And so she was the one that started calling me Black Oracle. It was because Oracle, Oracles of Delphi, I was going to be right, and it was going to be something you didn't want to hear. So Black Oracle. And so she set up an email for me that was called Black Oracle. And so that was my first name for my channel, was Black Oracle. And then I shifted it over to Shaman's Forge to be a little bit more personal to me. And over time, I found it was just better to go with my name, Blackie Thomas, because it was easier for people to search for me, to find me when they were looking for my videos than by those earlier names. That's the reason my channel has been around so long. It's had 3 distinct names for the channel. It's the same channel, same videos. Just that was the change. Hello, New Jersey. What is preferred grind on a knife? It depends on the knife, to be honest. If a knife for woodwork, stuff like that, then the Scandi good. But it shoulders up when you're trying to slice things like meat and stuff like that. And there, a saber is better. And so it depends on the knife. I mean, to be honest, what is it going to be used for? I like the strength of the Scandi grind whenever I'm got a knife that's going to be doing a lot of woodwork, because it leaves a thicker part of the blade for more power. At the same time, a saber or a true taper is just a dream whenever you're slicing meat and doing stuff like that. It doesn't shoulder out. So everything's a compromise. Every knife is absolutely the perfect knife for this job, and absolutely the wrong knife for these 25 jobs. It's just, you just learn it's all going to be a compromise. You just got to go with it and accept it. Y'all just bear with me. I'm kind of slow to read sometimes. Mick Jam said, cleaned up a 2-quart Boy Scout canteen with salt and water day. Hello from New Hampshire. That's the way to do it. Just do it and swirl it around, clean it up. That usually, the oxide that forms in the aluminum will normally just dissolve and come right off in hot water and a little bit of salt. And if there is anything biological in there, salt water and hot water will kill it. So after that, like I said, fill it up, let it sit 24 hours, come back, pour it in a clear glass and look at it. If it's discolored or something, try it again. If after 2 or 3 times it's still discoloring, something's been put in that canteen you don't want to play with. I knew a guy years ago that had a Boy Scout canteen, and he carried a solvent in it because it was the perfect size thing to sit onto his workstation, and he carried this toxic solvent. And I pointed out to him, you need to label that thing where nobody will ever, ever, ever confuse it. Again, oh, who's going to... It's a canteen, dude. And so I eventually took a Dremel tool and, did a skull and crossbones, said not food safe anymore, scratched it into it. So the canteen would always be that way for fear of that. Anytime I get something new, I'm always a little leery till I get some time with it. Thanks for all the videos. What was your very first knife that you could trust? A K-bar. My very first knife that I really trusted, good feel knife, was my uncle carried on Guadalcanal. And he'd come home with all kinds of things. And he gave me one of his carry knives. It was actually the Navy version, which had that solid sheath, not the leather sheath, but the fiberglass-like sheath. And that was my first really good knife. And I did a lot of work with a K-bar. And it's not a bad design. It's not my first choice of a design. And I did an early video that I've got a lot of views over the years on the K-bar knife and the uses of it. But that was the first really good one like that. Most time I went through all the fads, guys, back in the 80s, etc. I had all the Rambo knives. Cut a hamburger with it, I've had all the play knives. And usually the knives that I kept coming back to for real field work were not real sexy and glamorous and etc. The plain old butcher knife is a fantastic field knife for processing game. That's why we call it a butcher knife. And so I would often have a butcher knife in my kit to process game with. For me to carry the hollow handle, thick as a brick, stainless steel, latest whatever knife, it really didn't work. And but it looked cool, man. It had tactical all over that thing. But when it came down to, you're telling me we got a clean 60 catfish, quite often it was a regular old hickory butcher knife came out and we did the work with. But that type deal. Okay, Lamar asks, what do you think about the Open L number 8? Really good knives. Now, let me clarify. Open L's are very good knives for a cutting knife. They're not a pry bar. But for precision work or for cutting, they're great. I normally carry one in the top of my haversack for food prep and stuff. Now, the disadvantage to the wooden ones is the wood will swell up and grip the blade so tight you can't open and close it. Now, a trick that I do is I will take it apart and then I will open up that slot a little bit with fine sandpaper wrapped around a metal fingernail file. And then I'll put a little bit of wax in there to help seal it so it doesn't swell as easy. And I'll do a video on that one day to show how I do that. In my playlist, there's a thing where I did a series with Open L's several years ago where I took one of the large Open L's and put a second blade and then finally put a saw blade in there. So I had 3 blades in one Open L. It was just a project. Try it out, see what I could do. Po' boy, hello to Kentucky. Okay, Gray Wolf, I like the convex grind for doing woodwork. Correct, or chisel, depends on the job. Exactly. And Trapper Dan, hey man, good to see you, brother. And hello again from, that's a name, Max Cobra Rosiddle Face. Okay, sorry I butchered it. I'm sure it sounds cool. My southern tongue can't say all them consonants and vowels at one time. Diane, can you get results by soaking a rag with vinegar to antique revolver and wiping the revolver with it? Yes. If you're talking about stripping the finish to try to antique it, what I will quite often do is simply put it in a little tub and just cover it with the vinegar. It'll strip it. The vinegar is a mild acid and will just, what it's really doing is not eating, it's cleaning the surface. And what bluing is actually a surface pigment that's come up and it seals it. And so that will dissolve it and just let it float off. And so it just takes like 5-10 minutes, and just take a little light steel wool on it and then put it into baking soda water to neutralize it so it will stop rusting. Now, I kind of let mine float a little bit more because I'm wanting it to rust slightly, pit slightly, to add an antique finish to give it a modelly uneven. Originals, when you look at them, they're always that way. None of them are ever perfectly smooth and even. It's got a life. It's got a history. It's been dirty. It's rusted. It's got stuff on it before, dings and etc. And so that model pattern is what I'm trying to get. Okay. What do you think about Trap for Little Gibbler? Sorry, I don't know the reference to that one. Ooh, Ladrine, how do you sharpen your tomahawk, or how do you sharpen? I use a file, and quite often the way that I prefer to do it is to take, if it's a tomahawk where I can take the head off of the handle, I will do that, and I will put it on a board elevated slightly, like a 2x4 or something, and I will sit there and hold it down and run along the edge of it to cut the bevel in the angle that I want. Usually I'll just take whatever bevel is there and increase it a little bit. I like it a little wider than the factory does. And that in English is, instead of it being that way, I want that just a little bit, cuts a little better. If you make an axe or a chopper thin, it slices in, man, great, but it can get stuck because it'll spread those fibers apart and they'll bite it. That's the reason you want a little more cheek on it, so it hits and pushes, but you can pull it back out easy. And so a felling axe is quite often very, very thin and sharp, and it slices in, it cuts fibers very well. A splitting axe is normally thicker for that reason, because you want to force the fibers apart rather than just cut them. So, sorry, I had to tell the wife that I am live. Stop sending me 25 questions. Vancouver Island in Canada. Hello there. Have y'all got snow yet? Please tell me that it's finally getting cool. Jake Outdoors. I have a Pieta 58. I purchased 6-shot, 45 Colt, 250 grade lone wad cutters, cowboy velocity. Do you have any experience with conversions? I have not played with conversions. What I have is I have one of the 72 open top, or actually 1871 Richard Mason's conversions. I had in the past a 72 open top that was in 44 Colt. Again, keep your loads mild in the middle of the category, somewhere like 750 to 800 feet per second. The steel will handle the more power, but the problem with all the percussion guns, especially the Colt style, is it's 3 pieces: frame, barrel, cylinder, and when you fire, everything kind of stretches apart, and you're putting a lot of stretch by using modern cartridge firing type in it. And so I recommend keeping it mild, and you'll get better accuracy anyway, because when you try to hot it up a little bit, your accuracy just goes to crap. Start somewhere in the middle ground and go up or down just a little bit, and you're going to find the sweet spot. When you do the groups, you seem to suddenly shrink. So if I'm going to load up, I'll start with, like, just making up numbers here, guys, a 10, a 10.5, an 11, 11.5, and everything's in safe zone. And I'll take it and shoot like 5 rounds of each. Just don't worry about anything else. Shoot the group and see what the group looks like. And the promising groups, I will go back and reload more of that, and then take it out and do like a 10 or 20 round group to see the overall patterning of it. It's a slow process, but once you do work it out, then you've got something that's repeatable, dependable, over and over and over again. Hike with Mike. Hello from the swamps of Florida. Hello there. Hello, Poor Boy Adventures. Best books and ways to learn sneaky covert tactics. Alert manuals of the 1960s for long-range reconnaissance patrols. Go look up the Marine Corps published in Vietnam lessons learned. There would be some things in there about it, and this was as military units, Marine units were leaving combat zones, they were asked of what did you find out here that you wish you'd known when you got here on the first day? What tip, trick, tactic, whatever. And there's a lot of stealth stuff in there. Now, you're going to read a lot of it, but they're still available if you look around to find those books. And there's a lot of stealth in that of how to avoid drawing attention and stuff like that. And there used to be a thing called the Poacher's Bible. I don't know if that book's still available or whatever, but it was called the Poacher's Bible, and it was actually written for game wardens to better understand how to track and catch poachers. But apparently people on the other side read the book. So, you know, it's out there if you want to look. Briar Smoke, you mentioned butcher knives for field work on game. Have you tried the Case Side Buster? I have. The Side Buster design goes back probably the 1800s, and it's a good knife. It really is. I like the way that it fits in the hand. That large handle allows you to roll to get up in there. And a lot of people that don't understand in processing game animals and stuff, it's slick. A lot of when you're trying to cut and do the stuff, meat don't just cut as easily as you think it does. And as you cut, it wants to slide or twist. Plus, some blood is sticky. Some blood is actually like oil and slick. And when you're sweating and you're trying to process your game animals, etc., it makes a difference. And the Side Buster's got a good grip to it. I like the way it fits in the hand. You can get a hold of it, where a lot of the smaller knives that I've had in the past, it wants to start sliding around in your hand, and you're trying to bear down and do this, and you can feel it trying to twist, and it makes every job more difficult. And so the Side Buster, one of the reasons it was so popular was with farmers and stuff like that, processing, animals and stuff like that. That's one of the reasons. Hello, Justin. Welcome to the channel. How do you sharpen the spine of a bushcraft knife? What I prefer to do is to clamp it in a vise with a board on either side of it, not quite even with the top, okay? Then you're going to lay a file up there and just push straight. File teeth, this is it. The file teeth are a slight angle and will slide like that. So they're cutting like this action, but you're just going to go straight. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's hard to keep it exactly flat. And if you start beveling it, you lose it. You can flip that around and put the back of the knife flat down onto something like a sharpening stone or a diamond hone and keep the knife flat and level and saw the knife back and forth. That works sometime as well. But the whole idea is the outer edge of it, you want to keep 90 degree. And if it's up, down, whatever, you lose that 90 degree. So that's the reason. Now, I know guys that can walk up to a grinder and just make it perfect in one pass, but that takes a lot of skill. And the average person, it's either tried in a vise or flip the knife upside down and put it up there and just saw like that, making sure you're keeping the knife flat. Don't lean it back and forth, flat, up and down like that until you wear it in. It's a slow process, but once you get it, you'll know the difference. Riley, still carrying the buck 110 from Canada? Yes, sir. I still carry that buck 110. When is deer season in Alabama? Deer season will start in October with bow and arrow, and it'll go to February. We have a very large deer population down here. The last estimate I heard was well over, like 4 million deer. So we have a very long season. And Bear's in the channel. Hello, brother. Good evening to you. Have I used bench-made knives? Yes, not as bushcraft knives, but I have had bench-made pocket knives before. And I liked them. They were good quality. Matt Sumper, I just purchased a large lot of Boy Scout canvas tents and tarp tents. Should I try to clean them? If so, what would I use? If you're talking about the green canvas tents, I would recommend, if you're going to just use a soap, get baby shampoo. It won't hurt it. And just plain old baby shampoo, and use it, or dog shampoo, same way. It's got to be edible if those are using it. And it shouldn't be harsh at all, and just get the dirt off of it and then see what you got. You don't want to take whatever waterproofing is there, because a lot of times those canvas tents were proofed with different procedures. Some were a petroleum-based product. Some were gasoline-based. I had a World War II tarp that was gasoline and paraffin wax is what had been used to treat it. So, a lot of times that old stuff like that, who and what they use. So just I would use a baby shampoo or something, lay it out flat, wet it down, sprinkle a little bit on there, and take a new broom, new so it ain't got dirt embedded in it, and just agitate it on this side. Take the water hose it off, flip it over, do the other side, and then stand it up, hose all the dirt off of it, and let it dry. And see what you got. Then once it's good and dry, stake it out, put some water on it, and see how you waterproof. You got to redo seams or whatever. Thompson Water Seal works good. Okay, what are your thoughts on Crystal McCandless? Do you plan to go west, and do you know where Meridian, Mississippi is? I've been to Meridian, Mississippi. I was born and raised in that area, about 45 minutes from Alabama. Christopher McCandless. I'm drawing a blank. Name's familiar, but I'm drawing a blank right now. I'm sorry. Jason Ludwig just want to say hi. Hello. Oh, yeah. Deuces Wild RC Power as a 250 grain 45 PC. Yeah, the cabin balls definitely have more power than people think. You in South Alabama. That is correct. I am in LA, Lower Alabama. As we like to say, we love it because of our accent, etc. And I can increase or decrease my accent depending on the crowd that I am around. I did run in professional circles, and I have 10 years education, but I choose to speak this way because this is how I was raised, and I speak a distinctly Southern accent and a Southern frame of reference, and people seem to like it, and so I just speak Southern. But I'll have a lot of people say, "You're from where?" I say, "L.A." And they look at you with that look of Los Angeles. No, Lower Alabama. Always gets a good look out of them. Mr. Dennis Alvarez, thank you very much. Oh, dances with the empty 2 weeks of deer season. Yeah, I understand. Y'all don't have that big a herd. When they repopulated Alabama back in the late 50s, early 60s, and brought deer in, and most of my hunting when I was a teenager and etc., you did not ever shoot a doe. Any fawn, anything that we all called them does, anything non-shootable was a doe. I don't care how big it is. It was because we were trained. You only shot bucks, and bucks started in middle of November was the gun season, and that ran till like the end of December. So we had like 1.5, 2 months. And then over the years, it progressively got bigger and bigger as our herds just took off. I can remember being in high school, and the Fort Rooker, which is a military installation over here, they had deer hunts. And they would take 600 bucks, just bucks, off that property per year. But you were only allowed to hunt does 1 week, and that was during Christmas time. You were allowed 1 buck and 1 doe. Then in the late 90s or early 2000s, they opened it up where you could hunt does as well. And now it's to where you can take a doe a day every day, but you're limited to 3 bucks per season. One of the bucks has got to be over 6 points. You don't have to come in any order, but you can take a doe a day plus, and I have good friends that they take 10 or 12 deer a year. That's their primary wild game meat, is they go deer hunting. They work real hard. They get their 2 months off vacation a year, and they spend deer hunting. And so, yeah, we got a huge population down here. Okay, deuces. You say you got a 62 pocket police. You tried the slick shots, but they're still jamming. Okay, on the hammer face, cock it. Look underneath the part where it actually impacts the cap. Underneath that, you got a slot, and you got looks like two teeth. Make sure those two teeth are not sharp and go between in that inside that slot. Quite often, if that's rough or whatever, what it's doing is actually grabbing the cap and pulling the cap off. And so round that off and see if that helps a lot. Now, some people will fill that up with JB Weld and then clean it off. I don't. I like to use my safety notches if I can. But if you got one that's still, it's just jamming. The two things it can be is either A, that's pulling it off, or B, your mainspring is a little bit weak and the back pressure is making it rock back and embedding it into it. You got to hold it close. So change mainspring and defang it. Try those two things. Hope that helps you. Riley Ennis says, "Love. Can you put on a strong accent?" Well, in Alabama, you have the extreme pleasure of having the University of Alabama, which is football. And football league is a major thing down here. I mean, it is almost a war every year once we declare football season. Because those that run for Auburn, War Eagle, and them there's that run for Alabama, they are non-friendly at that point. So that's what I mean about you can turn the accent up or down too. Oh, yes. You're talking about the Sage. You're talking about the one that died in Alaska. I understand that. I understand part of there has been, let me refer to everybody else. He talking about the gentleman that went up into Alaska in the bus, the famous one that died in the bus. One of the things is the food source that he was harvesting. Up there was a wild edible that we, during World War II, when we had Japanese occupy Kiska Island and stuff like that, and we put our troops up there, we found out from the locals that you were not supposed to eat this pot herb to a great deal from them. They said it would cause paralysis. And so there were several cases of soldiers, our soldiers, that occupied those islands and other places in Alaska that they would harvest this stuff and cook it up like a table green that would have problem. Now, whether or not this individual was weakened by that, because he talked about how hard it was to travel and etc., and eventually he got to where he just was trapped. The only food he could get was that he kept mentioning this table green over and over again. So there's been some controversy that what he was eating was causing his problem because that's all he had to eat. That's all he had available. So I think I know they had to go and remove that bus and airlift it to someplace else because it wasn't such a remote area, and people were trying to make pilgrimages out to that thing, and then getting trapped and having trouble and having to call for rescue. So they just pulled the bus out and got it in there. Going off grid like that and going into that thing, can it be done? Absolutely, but you're going to have the skill. And you're going to have an honest opinion of what your ability is and know when to get the hell out. Too many people will let pride box themselves into an unwinnable situation. You've just got to be willing to do it. I would love to go into the backcountry of Alaska and spend some time and look around. I think that would just be awesome to do it. And I hope to do it one day, is actually go up there. But seeing that kind of country and all like that, that's very rugged country, and that's not for the timid. If you get in there like that gentleman did, he had a great idea. I think he was a little idealistic, and I don't think he put the time in to get his skills. And I'm sorry that he got up there and got himself trapped. But I feel that he had a good idea. But Murphy's Law is always with you. I was part of a group one time that we had went on a living history camp out, and somebody pulled a stick off a tree to make for roasting hot dogs, and or actually little sausages, and they slow roasted the sausages, and the stick was toxic, and they didn't realize it. Well, everybody but me and one other person ate the sausages, because it's really hot, spicy wild game sausage, and I didn't care for it. Well, about 3 o'clock in the morning, of the 8 people who were there, 6 of them had explosive problems. And by sunup, none of them could travel or walk. They were so sick from food poisoning, from the toxicity of that limb, that we had to go get help and get them out of there. And it was just luckily that me and the other person didn't eat, or we'd have been in the same boat, all over using a stick to heat up a sausage. It's the things that you don't know. That's what always comes back to bite you. So, hope that, Okay. Steve M. Received my Rogers and Spencer Day, 3 of my heavier bullets on 10 testing. Rogers and Spencer, good gun. I like mine. Rob Slagle, hello, sir. Good to see you. I know. I am. Alabama and Auburn are playing tonight, and I'm running. I know. Had I thought that tonight was the night, I would have never done it tonight. This is a sacrilege against my Southern heritage, because Alabama and Auburn are playing football tonight, and here I am on TV. 118 people. Well, not everybody's Alabama Auburn fans, but very few in the state are going to be watching me. I'll put it that way. Okay, let's see what else. See if we got another question here. Okay, Jake Outdoors, 2 property marked 1911. Really good guns. Yeah, I had a 1911. That was really my first centerfire handgun, was a 1911. I was 9, and I made a deal with an old Army vet, and I traded quite a bit of labor of raking leaves and stuff like that over the course of several months of $5 each, those sessions, to get up the $50 he wanted for that old World War II 1911 that had rode home in a duffel bag. Had a broke firing pin. And I got the gun, and then I found out how to change out the firing pin. So my first real modern gun was a 1911 at 9, and loved the guns. It shake it sound like a box of rocks, but it would shoot well enough at 25 yards, and that gun taught me a lot. Road trip for Blackie. I got to tell you guys, I had talked about doing going to Alaska with Dan Lutz. That was Dan's big idea. He wanted to go up there, and he wanted to see the mountains, and he wanted to see the bears, and etc. And we had bounced back and forth how we were going to do this. And he said if he got this done, he would, do this. If I did this, he'd do that. And it just didn't happen. But I hope to one day see Alaska. Scath discover your videos today. New subscriber. Well, hello, Scath Bushcraft, and welcome to the channel. Thank you very much. What do you think about Griswold 36? Very good. Don't be afraid of the brass frames. The average person will have that thing and shoot for 10 years before it will ever get loose. The metallurgy of the guns when they first brought them out the guns were noise makers. It was back in the late 60s, and all of the brass guns were being used really for Civil War reenactors to be able to shoot blanks, just go pow pow. They really didn't care about accuracy. They didn't care about a lot of stuff. That has changed. And today with cowboy action, if you don't have an accurate gun, you don't have a market. And the Griswold and Gunderson is a very accurate, no more or less than any other gun out there. And you will probably have a lifetime of shooting enjoyment before that thing ever gives you any trouble as far as the frame. As long as you're just reasonable with it. If it doesn't give you trouble in the first 100 rounds, it probably won't give you trouble. I've got a brass frame I picked up in 1976, and it is wore out. but there has been tens of thousands of rounds fired to that cap ball revolver. So the Griswold and Gunson's a good looking gun, you know, and I think would be a great shooter, especially for a range gun or for bunny rabbit hunting. Bill J. No, that's the Mark One, and I had that made up. Jason from Campcraft, and so when we changed the design of it, the Blackbird 2 still has a hollow, but doesn't have the folded over. It's a web with that. It streamlined cost and stuff quite a bit. You wouldn't believe how much effort goes into making that strap folded over, and how much that expensive material is to make a strap out of. So we went with this to try to keep me from having to go up again, because of the cost of material just got ridiculous. It got ridiculous, and so that's why we don't make that right now. Maybe one day, you know, I might get Jason to do another run of Mark Ones one day. We'll see. Oh wow, Deuce is talking about went to the gun show and saw a Ruger Old Army. Those things are getting expensive. Okay, JT, I live in Alaska. What type of gun would you use for bear protection? I'm a big fan of Elmer Keith's Use Enough gun. It would probably be a 45 Colt and a double action revolver, or a single action revolver of a Colt design, just because I got so many years experience with it, know how to run that thing instinctively. The 45 Colt or the 44 Magnum would be the two choices, because if you're dealing with big bears, you got to have a big hit. The real exotic ones, like I don't even know if they make them anymore, 375 Limbaugh or etc. The 500 Smith and Wesson, the 460s, they got a place, but really to me they're overkill for what I'm doing, because if I'm going to have to carry that much firepower, I need that big a hit. I'll tote a short 12 gauge with slug and buck for bear, as opposed to that handgun. It's got to do the job, but usually I can place them in there adequate enough under pressure that I felt a good stout 45 Colt load or a 44 Magnum load would do the job, you know. And like I said, if that ain't enough, a 12 gauge. Time to bring out the big gun. Let's just put big heavy load in there. Utah, awesome state. I have been to Utah. It is, but I like it. I saw your video about carrying a kit gun. Realized I actually have a Buffalo Scout. Yeah, the old FIE Buffalo Scout, which today the Heritage gun, the 22, is like that. When I was picking those FIE Buffalo Scouts up, they were $50 guns in the pawn shop, brand new. And it was just a simple little single action that was either the 22 Magnum cylinder or the 22 long rifle cylinder. It was a great companion gun where I ain't doing anything. I really need a gun, but I want it for self-defense against snakes, animals, whatever. Most of the guys that were fishing on the river, you'd see one laying in top of the tackle box for the ticked off moccasin that didn't like you being on his sandbar and things like that. Plus 22 Magnum up close, got a whop to it. And so for larger things, and when I was coming up, there was a real problem down here with rabid dogs, because people use hunting dogs a lot. And there was a real problem where a lot of dogs had got wild and had got rabid. And there was I remember a thing that was put out on the paper that was saying that if you had a dog, put a bright color collar on them, because people living out in the county and all, because if the dog was spotted without a collar on it, shoot it. It was that bad that we had that big a problem, and we had to thin them down. And so that's where that 22 Magnum and all, a companion piece to have up close, was really, really handy. Deuces. See you later. Thank you. Yeah, Rob, they removed the limits, let them take as many deer as the court. Yeah. Our herd down here got so big, they did reduce it. Like I said, now it's just $3, but you can take a doe a day. You know, get out there and get as many. You can take a doe and a buck at the same time in a day. So I can take a doe in the morning and go take a buck in the afternoon. So we got that big a herd. Danny, do you still carry the Buffalo Scout? It does ride quite often when I'm fishing because it's such a handy little gun. I've got a very tight pancake holster, and I carry a little of everything. I love my cap and ball revolvers. You know that. And so I'll carry the sheriff model 58 Remington. I've just recently got the Pocket Navy. That is planning on going on a couple of fishing trips here pretty soon. And just, you know, if I can hit things up close with it's accurate, the FIE, etc., small, lean, quick, fit in there. And then I feel guilty when I don't carry something. You know, I've carried this one the last 3 trips, and I got to carry this one. You ever get that kind of guilt that I haven't carried this knife in a while. I haven't carried this pack in a while. I haven't carried this, you know, kit gun in a while. And so I'll sit there and go, which one am I going to take? It's like a woman picking out shoes. It just, ugh. Okay, Chris, what are some good food items to bring on my first camping trip? Trying to reduce mess and cleanup. Okay. Here's one of my favorite things to teach people is immersion heating. Now, what immersion heating is, you're going to take a pot, a bush pot or whatever. You're going to put it on a stove, campfire, whatever. Fill it like 3/4 way up with water. Into that, you're going to put what you want to eat. Now, if you love such and such chili, take a freezer bag, name brand, Ziploc quart freezer bag. They're designed to take the heat better. Open the can, dump it into that, squeeze air out of it, and sit it in the water and let it boil for about 10 minutes. Then take it out and eat it out of the bag. You got a clean pot. So any can, whatever, any leftovers, whatever, you can take and reheat. And it's a great advantage in a family gathering because I want chili and she wants this and they want that and they want to warm up the leftover pizza. Put it in the Ziploc bag and put it in the water. All 4 of us can have the same in the pot at the same time, heating it up. And by thermal heating, you know, poor man's microwave, everything in the bags get warm. And then when they are, you take it out and eat it. So you can take leftovers, you can take whatever. So foods I recommend is any kind of stuff you would normally eat for lunch anyway. Always carry something that you don't have to heat, like those tuna sets or whatever, because if you've got inclement weather, it's coming, it's just howling rain, and you can't get out of the tent or out of the hammock, but you can eat this, you know, crackers or something like that to keep from sitting there with your belly growling. I always have a layer system like that where I have the main meals, and then I'll have the stuff in case I can't get out of the tent or something happens and I just don't have time. Something quick heat and eat or something just to eat cold. Hope that answers your questions. Does anyone shoot a 12 gauge black powder American craft pistol? No, but I know what you're talking about. That's 75 caliber. Back in the Revolutionary War, the standard British musket was the Brown Bess musket, which was 75 caliber. Today we call that 12 gauge. The French standard issue musket was a 69 caliber. Today we call that 16 gauge. And the hunting gun, trade gun, alliance gun was in 62 caliber. Today we call that 20 gauge. It was only after the Civil War they started calling these things shotguns as opposed to a musket. And so a 75 caliber dragoon pistol from the 1750s flintlock is a 12 gauge pistol is what it is. You can load it with shot, just like one big pumpkin ball or shot. And I can tell you they're very effective at close range. I've seen them used in historic hunts. So yeah. And what they don't tell you, that sucker kicks. Everybody wants one. Everybody wants to see it shot, and very few people want to pull the trigger more than once. So Oh yeah, Mississippi High carry guilt. Yeah, guilty. And I've got a lot of really really good gear. I've struggled most of my life to have to do make do. It's not what was the best; it's what could I afford. Military surplus. A lot of my gear was military surplus because that's what I could afford, and it was good gear. May not be exactly what I wanted, but it's what I could afford. Butcher knives, whatever. And so when I did save up the money and get that Rambo knife or whatever, that and of course there's always buyer's remorse when you got out there and figure out it didn't do what you thought. Man, it looked cool, but it just didn't do it. And so that's when I got with William Collins and the Master Woodsman, which became the Blackbird knife. That solved so many of my issues. All other knives are secondary to me now. I mean, there is my Blackbird, you know, that is mine, and it does my jobs and does everything I've always wanted to do in the field very, very well. I never feel like I can't do something with that knife. But then again, I feel guilty. Well, why ain't you tote this one? How about that one? How about this one over here? You got this cool one too. And back to that guilt, you just, you know, I see these people doing their layouts, their gear sometimes, and they'll have 5 knives, where I carry like 3. There'll be the big main knife, the pocket knife, and the other knife that I'll bring along for fun or for a craft or whatever. Usually 3 knives, the big belt knife. If I'm toting the kukri, then I also got the Blackbird, and then there'll be a small pocket knife of some kind somewhere in there. But I'll see guys lay out and they'll have 7, 8 knives. And it's like, understand, but when you actually have to carry it, when you actually spend a week or 2 out there, that list will start dropping real quick. We would do week-long campouts. Just you brought your gear, and it's catch it, cook it, clean it type deal. And if you didn't catch none today, you went hungry. And you start thinning out stuff by that 3rd day. There's the gear that you really used, that you really, really enjoyed, that really did the job, and then there was the other gear. And a lot of times that other gear kept getting thinner and thinner, and by the time, you got a few trips in, you didn't want to tote but this, and that became the gear, All right, let's see. Okay, James C., thank you very much. I'm glad you like my videos. What's the best way to keep your camp free of bears? Okay. Bears are opportunistic. For the most part, unless they've not been desensitized to people, they're going to want to avoid contact with you. So, the classic thing of hang your food up 100 yards away from camp. It's twofold. 1, it keeps them from showing up in the middle of the night looking through your stuff. 2, it also means you got to keep track of your food. You're going to and from that. You still can have just a scent of food on you that may attract them. So I recommend making the noises. If you think you got a bear, make noise. Apply more to his instinct to stay away from you, to his instinct to want to get something to eat. And so making noise will quite often distract him. A good rebel yell at 2 o'clock in the morning has set more critters running than anything else I know. Where there's something outside and it's getting braver by the minute. Well, just rear back and let them have it. And usually that's loud enough and sudden enough and spooky enough, and something that is not common in the bears and the other wild game animals. They'll bolt, and you put a little fear into them, and then hopefully they won't come back. But keeping your food away, keeping your scents, etc. In some places it's much worse than others. We have black bears down here, and you never see them. My granddaddy taught me, he said 99 out of 100 bears will run from you, but they don't come in that order. So you got to just use your sense. But I've had more people have posted videos of being in a deer stand and have have a bear run up the tree to come up and look at them not being aggressive, but they're being chased by a bigger bear, or they're just whatever, and they run up the tree to look at him. You know, we had a guy down here near Mobile several years ago that got his legs all clawed up where a bear climbed the tree to go after him. And he was 18 or 19 feet up into a deer stand. So, you know, you just gotta, it's the bear. Spook them away if you can. Try to avoid scents if you can. And if it comes down to you're going to be in a tent or something, have something you can bang together to make a bunch of racket with. And of course, have some sort of protection. If it comes to that, he's got fur and fangs, you don't. So when it comes to a physical altercation, you either got to be really good, really lucky, or have something that's going to level the playing field. Hope that helps. Blackie, have you ever eaten roast rat in a survival situation? No, I have not eaten them in a survival situation, but I did eat them at a corner market in Miami one time. Of a Vietnamese young lady that was cooking rat on skewers. They don't taste bad. I have eaten most stuff. You know, I've eaten octopus, whale, you know, in my life. If it doesn't consume me, it's on the menu. But I'm not, you know, averse. In a survival situation, it's just like a squirrel. It's a rodent. I know that a lot of people have aversions, and I understand that. And that just means more food for me. Because if it comes to that, I've eaten a lot of tree rat, which is squirrel. I've eaten a lot of bunny. I've eaten possums. I've eaten coon. I've eaten, name it, you know. The one thing I would pass on to you is understand this, because in case times get hard, guys, I don't want you to ever have to do this. But if it did, understand that if you ever had to eat a dog, a canine, which can be a coyote, a wolf, or a dog, if for whatever reason you're forced to have to eat that, understand that you can eat all the dog except for the liver. Canine livers are highly toxic vitamin A and are poisonous to humans. So do not eat the liver of a canine. You can eat the rest of the meat, and coyote don't taste bad, but don't eat, you know, the liver. Just passing that on. Okay, let's see. Yeah, a good rebel yell. You once you hear one in the middle of the night, you'll never forget it. What wild element? What? Excuse me, Tonto. What wild animal experiences have you had yourself, Blackie? Oh, let me see. I have encountered alligators at very close range before. That the alligator was laying in wait to come out of the water at a place, hopefully, I guess, for deer to cross or whatever. And I was going to walk up and get some water for a pot. And the clouds went right, and there was this like 12, 14-foot alligator not 3 feet from me looking at me. Encountering snakes all the time. One of the reasons I like my big hat is because I have turned and be eye level with the snake in a bush. I mean, like a big rattler or something. For whatever reason, it went up there after something, getting away from something, whatever. So I've encountered snakes. I've had rabid dogs come after me. I've had deer during the rut where the bucks are kind of crazy with breeding seed. I've had a buck come after me before where I was walking out of the woods and he came out. Then, of course, you got wild hog. We got, you know, the famous Hogzilla was here in Alabama, not that terrible far from me, and the one that was even bigger, you know. So you have several 100-pound animal that's got 10-inch tusk, and he's ticked off at the world. I've encountered them before out there. Domestic dogs that have got loose, gone wild, or whatever. Those are the ones that are the most problematic because most of them have experience with humans. And so when a pack of them want to get you, you've got to outthink. You're not going to outfight them. And so you're going to encounter animals. Now, the story I tell that everybody wants to know about the Bigfoot story was I had gone into Connecticut National Forest and we'd had a minor hurricane run through. And me and some buddies had a super secret hidey hole hunting camp back in the forest back there, and we wanted to see if it got damaged because it was late in the hurricane season and it was well into hunting season. I think it was early November. And we wanted to make sure before opening day, before we'd done hiked in there and find out that half our stuff's tore up because we had a permanent camp set up. And so I'd got off work, I'd hit it in late, and it was relatively warm, and I figured I wouldn't make it. I'm going to try to, and sun just ran out. So I had found this place as kind of a swampy area that had big old cypress, not big old cypress trees, but trees with the Spanish moss hanging in them. And I'd got in between two trees, and I'd slung up my hammock, ate my little food I'd brought with me, got in my hammock, and I pulled that U.S. Army blanket over the top of me to avoid the bugs and went to sleep. And right at dawn the next morning, something hit me in the gut. At the moment it hit, I felt it grab my legs and grab my head at the same time. And then it just dug its teeth into my abdominal wall, about even my belly button over the lip. And of course, you shriek, you come up, you fight your way out, and I ended up on the deck, and I'm spinning around trying to figure out, and nothing. It's right in that earliest twilight when sun's just coming up where you can just see maybe 10, 15 yards. That's it. And I spun around, got up against a tree. I'm trying to figure out what attacked me. You're running through the whole list in your head of bear. No, if a bear hit me, I wouldn't be getting up. Cat. No, bobcat line goes to the back of the neck. They're not going to hit me like that. Such and such. Suddenly, you start running through all the lists. You finally get to Bigfoot after a while, because you've eliminated everything else. And I got up against a tree, and I got my shotgun that I had with me, and I'm looking around. I don't see anything. I don't see any tracks on the ground, but when I run my hand up under and I come up and I got bright blood, I'm bleeding, and I felt like he bit, I don't mean like scratched, felt teeth go in. And it was only after I had calmed down and the sun had come up enough that I figured out it was a turkey had flown down from a tree and went to land on that log, and that log was me in that hammock. And that was his talons, his claws hitting me in the gut and cutting in, and his wings slapping my feet and my head as he launched off of me. See, so I got bombed by a turkey. I'm here to tell you that wasn't the first thing to come to mind, when something bites you in the abdomen like that and is trying to hold you down, is turkey. So, you get out there long enough, you're going to encounter something sooner or later. But understand you're the biggest and baddest predator there is. So act like it. Thank you from West Tennessee. Thank you very much. Pure lead bullets are better than for cap and ball, yes. Pure lead arbitrates better, and that means it grips the rifle, and it's also easier to load. The reason that they put tin into bullets is when they'd start doing cartridge type thing, when they'd make the bullet and they'd try to, at high speed, these machinery, force it into the brass, it kind of warped the bullet sometime. The bullet might hang up in that last second, and it would actually damage the bullet. And so they added tin to make it tougher. Plus the fact that once they started pushing the velocities up and the speed of cartridge firearms, they didn't want it to lead, i.e. the lead smear on the inside, like you take bubble gum and smear it in the rifling. And so but in percussion guns and old guns like that, pure lead is preferred. Now, a little bit of tin is not going to hurt you, but it's always better with the pure lead if you can get it, which what I use is I just buy bags of chilled shotgun pellets to reload shotgun shells. And because that's normally just plain lead that's been just dropped into water to harden it, that's reason they call it chilled. And there's very little anything else in it. And with that, I can make any kind of bullet I want. And so if I'm going to make modern bullets for like a 45 or a 9, I'll add stuff to it to make it harder. And if I'm going to make muzzleloading bullets, I just use it as it is. So that's where I go with doing it. Ryan Walker, El Chupacabra. Yeah. Well, that thing that in my video the other day that took off. I had somebody said, well, it looks like a dog. I said, there's no tail. Didn't have a tail bouncing. No cat or a dog would have had a tail. I'm telling you, what I'm seeing was that big fawn that had just stopped having it. That's what it looked like to me when it launched off. And the way I'm seeing it running away from me through the woods, bunnies and stuff run two legs like boom, 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 boom. This was running like independent legs, and that's deer. So, but yeah, when I showed it to Trinity Sainer, she said chupacabra. Okay, chupacabra. Sage, there are surprisingly remote places in Mississippi, Alabama. Absolutely. You get up in the mountains of Alabama, and it'll shock you. The views and things you get up in there, how intense it can be, how steep it can be, that you don't think you're in Alabama, you think you're in the Rockies. They ain't big enough to be the Rockies, but it's just how intense. And there's some places in Conecuh National Forest, which is 70,000 plus acres. They had a forest fire years ago in a section that is so dense and so remote that they chose to just let it burn and just monitor it to make sure it didn't come out of there and get to the planted areas, because it would be so difficult to get in there and try to, control it. It's just swamps and density and thick, and it's just a ball of barbed wire. And I've been in those areas. You can find some awesome hunting and fishing in them places, but you're going to have to fight to get in there. And there are places in Alabama and Mississippi that you get there and you won't even think you're in this part of the country just by looking around. It just does not fit your mental image of the place. Brad Docker, a friend that won't hunt anymore because an owl attacked him. I have seen an owl go after somebody one time. I don't know what the reason was. They were out in their garden and up the street from where we're at, and this owl swooped down and went for their head and was just ticked at the world. And them things got powerful talons and a beak, boy, and big wings. And the attack lasted maybe 16 or 17 seconds, but it took a lot of stitches to sew him up after he got hit. So yeah, they can do damage. Okay, well, I thought something. What's the news on the Blackbird Haversack 2? Okay, the third run has now sold out. They're in production now, and we expect them by the end of October. That would be the third run for the Blackbird 2. They're in process right now. Okay. Guys, I appreciate you giving me questions and stuff like that. Do you ever use shot for lead bullets? Yes. I will take the shot and melt it down and mold it into whatever I need. For target loads, work loads, standard velocity loads, etc. 90% of the stuff I can make, the hardest thing to make is shot. And so I've got shot to load shotgun shells with. And with that shot, I can melt and make all the other bullets for rifles or pistols, whatever. The hard part's making shot. That really is. So I would buy the 25-pound bags of shot and then turn that into whatever I wanted. And that system has worked really well for me. What are good dog breeds for survivalists? Mutts. I'll tell you why. A pedigreed breed like a German Shepherd, a Dobie, Pit, or something like that have a resale value. And so if you get a real fancy looking dog like that, people are willing to steal the dog to try to turn around and resell that animal. I know a guy that he loves these Malinois, I think the name of it is. It's a type of really big dog. And he's had 4 stolen. And he lives out in the country. Somebody will come up with a can of tuna. Come here, baby, and it's gone. And he loves the breed. And on the other hand, I've known people that had German shepherds and stuff like that for a security dog or whatever, and they go missing. If it's a breed that's in demand, yeah, a pure mutt that's a mix of everything, it's kind of like an old mule. To me, they're more intelligent and they're more trainable, where the pedigrees coming out of the puppy mills, etc., to me are usually not that bright and don't make that good of companions in the field. And so I encourage everybody, go to your local shelter. Find one that just seems to click with you, and get them for a security dog, for a running companion. That's the way to do it. That's how I've always done it. And rescue is my preferred method, because I've had a lot of friends that have contacted me over the years and said, if you don't want this one, I'm getting rid of this one. And it turned out to be the best running mate buddy of mine in the world. So that's just my 2 cents. Callahoola, yeah, great dogs. Kind of rare to find them nowadays. But there was a time the Callahoola cur dogs and Callahoola leopards, yeah, that was a real preferred back in the day. No, the friend up the street did not have a nice owl mouth. The owl got away. Oh, you're talking about something for a dog, for a general purpose dog for like hunting hog. If you're going to have a group of them, stay in the 40, 50 pound range. If you're not, then get a 60 or 70 pound dog. And you're going to have a dog you can train to kill them, because a wild boar, wild hog is a tank. He's got 1 inch thick hide, and he's got touches. And so you got to put a life vest, a jacket on that dog, or he'll rip him to pieces. I've seen a lot of people with very nice dogs and think that they're going to go hunt hog. And I tell them it's not a bright idea. A pointing dog, one to keep him off of me and to get him to bay up so I can take him out. Yeah, 2 or 3 smaller dogs, 40, 50 pound range, will easily do that for you. Just train them to back so that whenever you give the command, they don't jump in the way, But as far as having one that can go toe to toe one, you got to get a big, mean sucker. And even then, they're going to get hurt, because a boar, a medium sized boar, is just so much more horsepower than any dog. I knew a guy that had a Dobie that had been a military dog. He'd served with him in Iraq. And he told me he wanted to hunt hog. And I told him that's a bad idea. And he was saying how this dog can do all this. I said, it's a bad idea. And the hog was only about 35, 40 pounds. And that big military working dog went at him. And it was nearly $600 in medical bills for that big military dog to be sewed up. Trust me, just not a good idea. Okay, let's see and catch up. Okay, Blake, can I use a Magnum charge in my Wolf 50? I can't find info on that. You reach a point of diminishing returns. X amount of powder at point X will not be consumed in the barrel. It'll just blow out and make a bigger flash. An old trick we used to do back in the day was we'd take white paper, like big white sheet of paper, or an old white sheet that you get up at the Goodwill or something, and spread it out on the ground. And then, so here's the sheet. We'd be standing here shooting that way, so it's under the muzzle. And we would put a charge in it, let's say in a 50 caliber muzzle loader of 75, 80, perhaps 100 grains max, and shoot. And afterwards, we would pick up the side of the sheet and shake it and see if any powder. If we were finding a lot of unburnt powder, you'd reach the point where all you're doing is making a bigger flash and blowing. It's not consuming it. And that, that depends on how long the barrel is and how well it consumes it. So typically like the 50 calibers, I would stay somewhere around for a heavy hunting load, somewhere between 75 to 100. There's no real need to go beyond that. Uh, Years ago, the old Browning mountain rifle was proof to 200 grains. But I'm telling you, at 110 grains, it was just blowing it out the barrel. You're making a bigger flash, but you're not getting any more velocity or any more power out of it. And so I would recommend just staying in this, work it up from like 75 to 80. Are you accurate? Can you hit the target? And is it staying reliable, repeatable? You don't get wildfires. That's what you need. Trying to go on up in power does not equate to better performance at that point. Okay, let's see here. What's your favorite wild edible plant in Alabama? Greenbrier. It's everywhere down here, and it's edible. It tastes like peas to me. And so I take it and I'll dice it up and boil it, and it tastes like peas. You know, greenbriers everywhere. Wood sorrel is another one everywhere. Of course, you make pine tea, then there's sassafras. Then of course there's dewberry, which is, we call them blackberries, but it's really dewberry. Great whenever they're in season. There's a lot of wild stuff I'll pick up on a ad hoc. I don't do that on my channel a lot because I can't be there with you, and I don't know if there's a poisonous lookalike where you live, and so that's kind of risky. If I tell you, oh yeah, this is absolutely da da da, and it looks like it, but in Arkansas or whatever, there's this bad thing that looks like it, but so the reason I kind of stay away from it. Sage, do you practice any alternative firing such as archery, atlatl, or other sling bow, whatever? I've done archery quite a bit. In fact, I was an archery instructor in the Boy Scouts. Not nearly like I did. At one time, I had 5 bows, and I did a lot of hunting with bow and arrow quietly. You know, bow and arrow is very, very quiet and doesn't attract a lot of attention. So by definition, I got really good with a bow up close. I've used blowguns for taking small game, squirrel, rabbit, stuff like that up close. I played with that atlatl, but it never got serious with it, because if I'm toting an atlatl, I can tote a bow, and in my woods, I'm just more confident with the bow than I am with the atlatl. Just my woods are so thick, and the atlatl is really a big game gun. Its advantage was you get 5 or 6 of your friends, and you'd sneak up on that woolly whatever, something the size of a cow, and you'd take the big chunking spears, and on the command, everybody would throw and it'd harpoon into them, and then you backed off and let him run around and they'd do all the damage, and then when he bled down or you'd finish him off. See? I know people taking whitetails with atlatls and stuff like that, but you need a fairly open area for me to launch it, you know, and in the thick stuff I'm in, an arrow is far easier. It's hard enough to get a bow in here, more or less, trying to take a 6-foot spear and throw it. So yeah, I prefer to carry arrows. Ryan Walker, my dog gonna be trying to get back. That's a good idea. We often would just use the command hold, and that warned him. When I holler hold, it means I'm about to take a shot, and everybody knew to stop. In fact, we used to train the dogs that when we yelled hold, they all sat down. It was another command for sit, and that kept them from, as you're squeezing trigger, him bolt into the line of fire. So yeah. Don't use a musket. Oh, now come on, muskets can be good. They're just sort of like shotgun. Actually, a rifle musket's more accurate than a shotgun. Woo, you got one there. Okay, Julian. Getting a family to work with you can be very challenging. I know this from experience. You see the importance of the training and the etc., and they just don't seem to understand or care, and so that is a real challenge. My advice is to you get the training for yourself so that you can show them. B, videotape yourself doing the thing. Make up your own little collection of you explaining it. So that if for some reason you're not there, they may have that. Okay. A video reference library, a printed book, or make up your own, make it 3-ring binders with information so that if you're not in the picture, they've got the source to do it. But I personally, my first wife had no interest in woods, anything like that whatsoever. Her idea of roughing it was room service. And so, yeah. So it's going to be tough. Games are a good way. Try to get them invested in games or rewards or something. We'll do this in exchange for that. Keep it as light and fun as you can. Kids can normally be brought on board better with some sort of challenge that they get a reward if they do this. I wish I could help you. That's going to be tough, and I wish you good luck. Kevin Cohen, hello. Do you still have your scout badges? What was most memorable? I do not. I was never a Boy Scout. I, as a grown man, was drafted into the Boy Scouts out of living history, and I was on roundtable committee, and then I went off and became a national shooting sports school to become a shooting sports director for a summer camp. I did archery, rifle, shotgun, and then I helped teach instructors, teach scoutmasters on how to build a fire, how to do stuff, because quite often the scoutmasters got volunteered into this because the church group or whatever, and their son or their daughter is part of the group now, and so they didn't have the skill to begin with, they got volunteered. And so Blackie was helping train them. And so I didn't get to be a Boy Scout. I got to do the stuff for real and didn't get a lot of badges from it. Although I've had Scout badges been given to me, both shoulder patches and stuff like that, and Order the Arrow. They indoctrinated me into Order the Arrow. I was part of that. But I just never kept up with that. I was here for the kids to instruct the kids. Like I told them, I don't care anything about the politics. I'm here for the kids. And let's just get that straight. I'm such and such, daddy is important, so he's got to become a scoutmaster. That doesn't concern me. My concern is working with the kids and getting them the skills. So y'all handle that part, I'll handle this part. So I didn't get a lot of that. In fact, I dug out my uniform shirt not long ago. I'm going to hand it off to somebody. This hat's a Boy Scout Master hat from Explorers. It was a replacement for a hat I had earlier that got missing. Do you use poison on blowguns? No, never did. Everything I used was contact hit. Just pure contact you can take and learn to make up. There's these bamboo skewers you'll find at Walmart and stuff like that around where the kitchen knives and spoons are. It's for making little, the small things you'd put like little shrimp skewers or whatever. Okay, fondue skewer. We'd take that and then we would wrap thread at the base, and then we'd put raw cotton because they grow cotton down here. So stop on any of the side of the roads and pick up handfuls of cotton where they've harvested cotton and it's left over. And we'd spin and make the tuft to make the long dart for blowguns. And you could easily, go boom. And I had a 7.5 foot long bamboo tube, and you could easily bury it a ½ inch into a pine tree. So if I could hit it, it was as effective as a 22 out, say 10, 15 yards. Well, I could hit something like a rabbit out at 25, but squirrel or something, it was point blank up close. And I was never as good as some. A good friend of mine got a much better with me, and he would go every year, take blowguns and go squirrel hunting. He was just that good with it, and he'd look 25 foot up a tree and take a squirrel out clean. It was like shooting a 22. I just never had that kind of skill. Minuteman Patrol, hello from Alabama, back to Indiana. Have I hunted deer with a black powder revolver? Yes. Very close range, normally a deer stand or something like that, or blind. In my woods, it's very thick down here. I'm in a semi-tropical jungle. Lower Alabama is listed as a semi-tropical jungle. And it's so thick that quite often you'd be at 10, 20 yards would be the sight you could see. And at that range, I could easily put almost every shot, should be every shot, onto a Coke can. And if you can hit a Coke can at that kind of range reliably for all five, or awful close to it within reason, you could hit a deer, because that's about the size of a deer heart, and the vital area is, about like two hands. And so a can that big, if you could hit that reliably, you could take the deer reliably. And so I've shot them out of a deer stand like that, and it works. I've taken hog, everything from 5 yards out to 15 or 20 yards, depending if I could place my shot. Placement is the big thing. Okay. To Julian, glad to help. Anything? Thank you. Glad to help with the Boy Scouts. Always willing to help them out. Sage said longbow is your favorite. I like simple. I got into the into the compound bows for a while. And you know what? It just didn't work for me. I was always an instinctive shooter, and I preferred a plain old hickory longbow. And I made up my own, and I bought a couple. I had a bear recurve at one time that I used quite a bit. I got a bear from a good friend of mine one time. It was an 80-pound draw. And I was young enough and studly enough I could handle that. And found it had a problem because you'd shoot a whitetail and the arrow would just blow clean through. I had an Oneida Eagle. The first year they came out, that thing had ridiculous foot per second. And there was a reason they told you to wear a metal arm guard. I believe that they created carbon fiber arrows for the Oneida Eagle. And those that remember the second Rambo movie, that's an Oneida Eagle. And it was designed for hunting bear. And that funky arrowhead he's putting on is called a copperhead ripper. And it was designed for penetrating the skull of grizzly. And it was double activated cams and everything else. But the arrows would just grenade. I never had one grenade on me, but I had them bust where I would launch and they would just come apart. And so they backed it down. Like the second year of production, they backed it down like 100 feet per second. But because the arrows just couldn't take that. But yeah, it would, the problem, high speed, power of those kind of things, and like super powerful crossbows. Most of the Native Americans carried 30 or 40-pound bows. There was a reason. It would harpoon in, leave the arrow in them, so that when they took off running, the arrow would dance around and do more damage, as opposed to just blow clean through them. But we come from a mindset of firepower, so we think faster, stronger, harder is better. In some ways, it may not be. I have not tried using bismuth, Kevin, for casting round balls. I've stuck with lead. I don't know how. If you can take a thumbnail and mark on it, it's soft enough to use in a gun. But that was the thing, that never use zinc, because zinc's too hard. And you think, well, it's about the same. It really isn't. When it hits and it starts to go down that barrel, the pressures go through the rib because it's so hard, it's forcing it through the steel. It's like a goose swallowing an orange. And so it drives the pressure up, where the soft lead kind of squeezes down and goes through. And that's the reason they want very soft. So I don't know how hard bismuth is, but start with kind of a medium load to begin with, okay? And then go up slowly from that. What material your hat is made? It's made out of crushable felt. This hat is Boy Scout Explorer's Scoutmaster hat from the mid to early 90s. It was a crushable felt hat. This one is fully crushable. And I had a Stetson before this that disappeared. That was same, this kind of Confederate slouch hat type thing is my favorite field hat. And I got this one as a replacement. And I bought two of them after I had this one for a short amount of time, and I liked it so much, I immediately bought a second one. It's still over there in storage, right over there. That this one hadn't wore out in 30 years. So when this one finally gives up the ghost, and I'm getting a couple little bitty holes up in there, once it finally gives up the ghost, I've got a backup ready to go to replace it with, because this is my hat. Timothy, been watching your videos all day. I learned a ton of stuff. Thank you. My pleasure, sir. Glad to help at any time. Bob said, I just finished my level 1 archery, and my counselor's considering sending me to camp school. Awesome, sir. Congratulations. I hope you do it. Yeah, I really think you'd be good at it. John Henry, no more rendezvous. I kind of backed out of it, I'll be honest. I started rendezvousing in 1982. My first national rendezvous was 84. And I got in with a super group called the Alabama Red Wolves. And we went and did a lot of rendezvousing. And we put on the South, we were either putting on a Southeastern, or we were the dog soldiers at the Southeastern from 1990 to 2000. And plus going to other national events, plus going to all the local shoots. Back in them days, every month there were one or two within striking range. Where I'm at, there are two big clubs here. And so I rendezvoused a lot back in them days. And to be honest with you, one of the reasons I got out of it was it kind of got sad to me. Not anything was a thing. It's just I was kind of the young guy, and so everybody was getting old, and so the young blood was going to the cowboy action. And I remember when we chased this guy down at one of the early events because he was wearing underwear underneath a breech clout. Well, you ain't going to do that. So we chased this guy down to cut the underwear off of him, because if you're going to wear a breech clout, you're going to wear a breech clout, by God. And everybody had to be so super authentic, and we were so serious about it. And then at the early 2000s, with the groups that I was running around, it had got where everybody was old and people were using hibachis and stuff. They just couldn't build fires and stuff anymore, and it was more out of not wanting to watch it die than anything. The reason I pulled out of it, and I only started getting rid of my gear not long ago. James Bender, I gave a bunch of clothing to and a bunch of other stuff because we're about the same size. So my old bright red coat and stuff like that I'd got, I horse traded and gave them to him, and a lot of my publications and things I'd had from the day I passed on. So I'm still sort of helping, but I'm not rendezvousing anymore. And my wife and I, we're 60. We just don't do that. We're doing bushcraft and stuff where hammocks are a whole lot easier to sleep in than sleeping on the ground with a pack basket. Let's see. Corey, I'm in Texas. Thank you very much for liking the channel. Cap, you're welcome. Ricky Gonzalez, love this for you. Happy for you. Thank you, Ricky. Appreciate it. Brad Dockey, yes, a 22 can be used for that. Now, that's not legal. But could it be done? Yes. That was the #1 favorite quiet gun of a lot of the illegal ne'er-do-wells, was a 22 long rifle. Properly placed will do a lot more than you think it will. Sage, compounds have more, correct. Your fancy compound bows, the sighting system, the weights, etc. Um, you're more like firearms technology at that point. You're still limited in range. Uh, let me tell you this one on my friend Roger. Uh, Roger had and I had become friends, and he had started kind of been one of my students and started learning stuff. And he had got a bow, and he lives out in the country not far from me. And he said he was practicing with his bow. He wanted to learn how to shoot. Okay, cool. And then he was sending me some pictures from his phone of his target. He's got a standard, archery target, and he's got all the arrows are in a group about that big. And he said he just couldn't get the thing to group any better. I can't make it get any smaller than that. I said, well, okay. And I said, would you come over and give me some pointers? I said, sure. I'm sure it's just probably your release. It's how your body is lined up, etc. So I got over and we talked to him, and then I'm talking to him and his wife, and he said, I'm going to step out and warm up. And so he stepped outside to warm up, and I'm continuing talking to the wife like 10 minutes. And then I come walking out, and Roger's standing there, and he just shoots the last arrow into the group, and the group's about that big. And he says, see, I just can't get it to get any smaller. I went, uh-huh. Roger was shooting at 50 yards, not 10 yards, not standard archery 25 yards and less. He was shooting at 50. I went, dude, if you're doing a group like that at 50 yards with a bow with no sights on it, and you're doing fine, don't worry. Let's move the target up to real. Well, I thought it'd be like 100 yards. No, that's firearms, dude. Archery is like 10 yards, 15 yards. So I moved it up, and I then went to shoot like a Coke can bottle bottom. Oh, yeah, you just didn't understand. You were doing a lot better than you thought you were doing. I know guys that have hunted deer for years that would kill to have a group like that at 50 yards. So, it can be done. Oh, I see what you're talking about, Kevin, about illegal in California. I understand. Jason Louis, you're like an encyclopedia. I have been called a veritable storehouse of useless information. I was one of them that, for those of you that don't know, I was born crippled originally. When I was a child originally. And I didn't get to play like other kids. I had to develop my mind so I could sit. That was about it. I had a cast on from the hip down on the left-hand side, so I had to just drag myself around backwards. And so, unlike most kids that would be jumping and running and stuff, I didn't. And my sister taught me to read at a very early age. And so I learned to read. And she was the hallmark of what set me on the course of my life of mental retention, because we would play little games where she would give me a word, and it'd be a word like jaguar. And then she'd go to school. She's 12 years older than me. And then when she got back, what was the word? And if I remembered the word correctly, I would get some little, piece of candy or whatever. Well, that progressed to where it was from a word to a phrase to read this line, read this paragraph. She would hand me the paperback book, put a mark with a pencil, start reading here. She'd go take her shower to go to school in the morning, and then she'd walk back, where'd you get to? And she'd put another mark, and she'd take the book with her. And when she came back from school that afternoon, she'd open the book, and I had to recite it verbatim. If I missed one word, I didn't get my prize. She developed my memory. And so over all these years, I was always fascinated with hunters, woodsmen, fishermen, the long hunters, the coureurs de bois, etc. And so I just absorbed everything I could read about it, everything I could experience from people that had experience or knowledge of it. I just loved it. And that's where I got a lot of my information from, plus going and doing. Many of the old woodsmen that I were around were fantastically skilled. They sucked as teachers. He wasn't here to teach. He's here to hunt, or he's here to fish, or he's here to make something. And so you just had to be quiet and watch and learn by observation of watching an uncle start out with a hunk of hickory and take a draw knife and make an axe handle from scratch in about 30, 40 minutes. Because the axe handle broke, he just make a new handle. Up in the garage roof were the billets of hickory, and that was for handles. Because you need a new hammer handle. They didn't run the store; he just made one. And so I learned by watching these guys, and how much I wish now I could step back through time to several key moments of when I witnessed certain skills. Now I would have worthy questions to ask. But at that time I didn't. So I just observed and tried to figure out, why is he doing that? Things like that. Just how I wish I could step back and ask those questions. Jay's live. Do I have any experience bushcraft on the plains? Nope. Sadly, I'm an Alabama redneck. Wide open areas. I had been out there in jobs I've had. I've traveled. I was a truck driver at one point and traveled. So I have seen the Great Plains. I've seen Kansas and all those places. And it's a different mindset out there because you don't have the wood resources that I do. But at the same time, you go down to the Everglades and there's swamps. Or the guys in Louisiana, they've got all the swamps and the bayous. That's a different thing. I've got a little bit of swamps and some knowledge, but they're a lot better than me. And you guys out in the Great Plains, you've got different skill sets than I do. And then you go up into Canada, Alaska, the mountains. The guys up in northern New England might have slightly different skill sets than I do. You're a product of your environment, and I haven't had a chance to go out there. I would not be totally helpless, but I'd be hunting some shade. I put it that way, because there ain't a whole lot out there. I've been out there quite a bit, and there ain't a whole lot of my normal resources. I'd have to adapt pretty quickly. Sage, have you ever found any artifacts in your part of Alabama? Yes. Um, there's a place called Clayhatchie, Alabama, and back in the late 1980s, or about 86 or so, the state came in and replaced a bridge and dug in and made a much bigger bridge. Just south of there, on a little bitty creek that's called Claybank Creek, there's a sandbar, and I was part of a black powder club that was called Claybank Free Trappers, and we'd go down there and shoot. And there was this one particular day that me and old Captain Bass, Leonard Bass, went down there to shoot, and then we walked down the creek. And when we got down the creek, looking at the edge of the sandbar, and this is within weeks of them completing that bridge, I thought it was tile, pieces of tile in the sand, and it turned out to be arrowheads and pottery pieces. They had dug into a mound and didn't know it. And so we filled up 11 coffee cans with pieces of arrowheads and whatever, flint and all kinds of stuff. And then we took them to Fort Toulouse, which is a archaeological site here in Alabama, at the junction of the Coosa and the Tallapoosa that form the Alabama River at Wetumpka, Alabama, itself an old Indian village. And went to the lead archaeologist there named Ned Jenkins. And he was going through and pulling out, going, that's a 10,000-year-old point. That's a 500-year-old point. And we made up boards for all the area schools for the libraries of arrowheads and donated the rest of those cans. So, yeah, I've come across stuff. My grandfather found a cannon in a swamp that was probably from the late 1700s. Whether it was used in the Civil War and got stuck in that swamp, or where it got dumped in the swamp during the pre-days, we don't know. But he found it in like 1932. And so there's stuff down here. You keep looking around. If you got an eye for it, there's stuff to find down here. Okay, Jason, thank you very much. Uh, Okay, reading along, trying to catch up, guys. Hang on. Corey, have I ever come across a snub-nosed new model army? I know what you're talking about, an avenging angel. I have seen them. I knew somebody back in the 90s that had one, but I have not any extensive knowledge in firing. And the problem with it is, for those of you that don't know, the avenging angels were a part of the Mormons in the Salt Lake City area under Brigham Young, and their bodyguards, some said assassins, some said they were bodyguards, carried the super short barrel percussion revolver. Sometimes it was 1860 Armies that they just cut off like a 1 inch barrel and things like that. And it was meant to be a belly gun, point blank, you know. And that's the break of it, is from cowboy action shooting for side matches where you'd load the gun off on the side. Yeah, it'd probably be a lot of fun to play with it. For a practicality of carrying it in field, no, you can't reload it worth the flip. The best, if you're looking at that, is the 5 inch barrel sheriff's model. Fantastic. I had one. I had a pair of them for years, and I got in a tight about 10 years ago, and I made up a case set with a pair of 5 inch sheriff models, 60 Armies that I'd made up, and I had to part with it for money. But they're great for field use, quick, handy, plenty of power, and the 44 can easily be loaded with birdshot to make a snake gun out of it, which is the predominant reason I want to carry it like that. And so just quick and handy. Crossover Paranormal Society, love the name. Hello there. Okay, any recommendations for a cabin ball revolver? If you have never fired one before, you've never been extensively shooting, but you do have a background in modern handguns, get a Remington 58, a Sheriff Model 58 if you want a shorter barrel. The sight picture is more like our modern fixed-sighted guns, and it will just be easier in the learning curve to start out with it than the Colt is. The Colt, with the three-piece of the frame, the cylinder, and the barrel, is a little more touchy, where you have to learn a lot more tips and tricks. And so I always recommend, for the very first gun, if you're wanting to just get one, I just want to see if I like it or not, get a 58 Remington and start out with it. You'll be better off. It's easier to learn with, and it's easier to get it, to see if it's going to get in your blood or not. Marcus Haven, Blackie, do you still teach at Dave Canterbury schools? No, sir. I never taught at Dave Canterbury schools. I know Dave, go up to his Pathfinder gatherings a couple of times. We have done some other exchanges of information, but I don't work for him, etc. We just know each other. We have a good working relationship. I'll put it that way. But I have never taught at Pathfinder school. Have I ever played with Star revolvers? Only in handling them. And the one that I had that I was handling was the single action version, not the double action. I understand the double actions can be kind of finicky. I know Mike Bellevue got one. He said that it gives him trouble because of the internal springs and etc. How it's got to work. So I have not. Attila A, greetings from Tennessee. I've been watching your channel for a month and I really enjoy the content. Thank you very much. Welcome to the channel. Corn Pops Revenge. Love the name. No, I'm not a Floridian. I'm an Alabama. I'm just above you at the Alabama Georgia corner. Kind of North Panama City. That's me. But we run over the same territory. It's just yours is a little flatter than mine, a little more scrub oak than mine. How did I learn about Sleepy Jeep? How did I learn about Colts having asymmetrical grips? Holding originals. When you picked up the replicas, and it's just it from the side it looks right, but when you're looking at it from the back, it looks like this blob. And then you look at a real Colt, the way it's tapered and etc. It's a day difference. It's like the shape of a banana and an orange. I mean, once you see it and you notice it, and I was very lucky to get to shoot early in my career some originals that good people were willing to let me try out, and the feel of the grip, Colt's grip was different, and I began to emulate that on my guns, where I would take the replica gun and reshape it to have one side slightly thicker than the other, so it fit the palm, so the grip was better, it held the recoil better, and etc. Colt was on to something there. And in the recent gun that I got was Rogers and Spencer, I pointed out that at the top of the grip on the Rogers and Spencer, it flares, whereas all the Remingtons do not. The Remingtons are either one size or they taper from bottom to top, whereas the Rogers and Spencer tapers in the middle and then it flares back at the top. And when you grip it, it feels like a Colt grip, other than that big flare at the bottom. So you could tell, again, that gun was feedback coming back from the field of the war and a manufacturer trying to answer the questions and the concerns of the people in the field. And the Remington was a little too narrow, hard to cap, and that made it easier to cap and grip better. So one of them little things, when you pick up one, you'll know it. Have I done one about medical kits for personal group use? I have not, and I need to do that. Me and Bear and all of his background, etc., he was certified as an EMT at one point. And so we're talking about, in one of the upcoming Old Ways videos, we're going to talk about med sets of a personal type, one that should be carried in a vehicle or something like that, and then a much more in-depth that you're going to need for a homestead or whatever. He just got in the books of Where There Is No Doctor, Where There Is No Dentist. He went and ordered a set to have that. And we're going to talk about books that will give you a good working idea and medical kits for ideas of what you're going to need. Because ultimately, if it's serious and you can get to help, by all means, go get the help. Go to a professional that knows what they're doing. Don't rely on a book or whatever. If you have the option, at the same time, having a good working knowledge of how to treat injuries and things like that may be common. If you're going to be splitting firewood, understanding axe injuries, how to stop massive blood flow, how to be safe, etc., because I'm swinging something big and it could go bad. If you're going to be doing a lot of firearm stuff, understanding how to deal with gunshot wounds so I can safely get help or transport you to a place to get you help. That's the whole thing. Your job as a first responder is buy time as much as possible. And so medical kits and stuff like that should have that. And a lot of guys, medical kits kind of go off on the deep end a little too big to where they're wanting to be a medic. And I'm not saying you couldn't be, but that takes a lot of things. And a military medic is still trying to just stabilize you to get you in the chopper to get you back to the MASH unit. Today, they not as well trained really as the medics you had in the 50s and 60s because they couldn't get you back nearly as fast. You're going to have individuals get hurt, and the medic was the doc treating you for the next 12 hours to a day until we could get you out of the field and get you back to the rear. Whereas today in modern times, it's not. They're just stabilizing you, zoom, you're gone. A lot of times I saw report numbers that was talking about from combat injury to arriving the MASH unit was 45 minutes or less, and Desert Shield, Desert Storm, whatever. Many times much less. And so a lot of the medical kits today you're seeing are really geared toward you doing a lot of things you shouldn't be doing in the field. Object here is stabilize, get you home. maybe that's a little too much to put in one statement. I'm sorry, but we're going to deal with that and talk about that in an upcoming video. Will Rowell? Yeah, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. Rowell. Greetings from South Carolina. Really enjoy the videos. Have you ever used any of the 48 Dragoons? Yes, I have. I've had quite a few of the third model, and I've had one first model, and I've always wanted a second model with that square back trigger guard. The third model is just the standard Colt lock work scaled up. So it's got the elongated slots. The only real difference between the first model is very much using the Walker type internals with round peg. The second model was a very short duration. It's really just a transition of parts, where the lock work that's going to be in the third model is coming online, but they still got the square back trigger guard. And then when the trigger guards ran out, it became the third model, and it's around. It's really just the first model and then the second. And the second model, they just changed trigger guard, but from a collector point of view, they call it the third. I've always wanted the second. I think that's the sexiest Dragoon because that square back trigger guard. I want to have one. Fingers crossed. Might be getting it for my birthday this year, as I'll get me a third model. A second model Dragoon, and of course Walker, and so that'll be videos on that. Okay, Scott Smith, what's your favorite EDC pocket knives and handguns when you're out in the real world? I carry a Swiss Army Fieldmaster in my pocket at all times. That's my EDC carry. Personal type, other type stuff, if I feel that I might have need of such a device, will probably be a CZ 75 9mm or a 1911 back and forth. If I'm not carrying a wheel gun, I have toted black powder guns and concealed carry holsters before as well. That would be something on a video, wouldn't it? Bank robbery or something. The old guy in the back pulls out an 1860. That would be one heck of a. I'd be on CNN for sure with that one. But I had a Sheriff Model 1860 that was short, and I could carry it in a concealed holster, and you wouldn't notice I had it on. So it just depends on what I feel like, and where I feel like I need something. Blackie is a 36 caliber black powder pistol? Yes, it is a 30. The 51 Navies and a few others are 36 caliber. Yes, they're black powder pistols. Jason, have a good night. Thank you for showing up. We're gonna call it quits in about 10 minutes. That'd be 2 hours. I bored y'all enough. Oh, Marcus, is a good pistol to start out? Yes. One, resources. 36 caliber is you can get a lot of bullets for 1 pound of powder of lead. You get a lot of shots for 1 pound of powder, and so it's more shooting for the same thing. So if you got a pound of powder for a 44 and a pound of powder for a 36, for the general purpose load, you're going to get more shots out of the 36 than you will. So it's more cost effective, especially when you're first starting out. And I want to get into it, and I don't need all that extra horsepower. Just go out and plink with it. Go with 36. Be a good way to go. Strategic Relocation North American Guide, Safe Places. I have heard of that, have not read that. Hello, William Cruz. Oh, glad I got your name right, Raul. Do I know of any good resources for bushcrafting on the plains? Dadgum. Yes, he's the desert guy. Dadgummit. I'm drawing a blank on his name. I can see his Cody Lundeen. Look at Cody Lundeen's stuff. Cody is a desert, open area type guy. He would be a very good source because the difference between desert and plain is content of sand and cover, but the same basic ideas of openness, navigation, of resources, those two are close enough that I think Cody Lundeen would be a good source for you to look up for his type of stuff. He's predominantly a desert person. I don't know of somebody right now off the top of my head and anybody that I follow that's out in the middle of the Great Plains doing that, other than people that might be in mountainous areas or whatever, like in the Rockies or etc., that also go down in the plains. But it when you read about the people that were going west that settled into Kansas and stuff like that, how rabbits, snake were common food sources, how they would cut sod and stack up to make houses because you didn't have the wood. Well, it's still viable today. An entrenching tool, cutting sod and stacking it up, can quickly produce a very usable shelter out of just dirt and grass, fairly quickly. So that's where I'd look, just to hopefully give you an idea. Sage, what's my preferred method of primitive fire to avoid it? But if I have to do it, it's going to be a bow drill. I have used a fire plow several times. When I wanted to learn how to do primitive fire and I wanted to learn the bow drill, I went to my great mentor, Francis McGowan, which I call Grouch. And we were going to have a week-long camp out on his land. And he said, I told him I wanted to focus on learning how to do primitive fire. And him being a former Force Recon Marine and being a scoutmaster with many years experience and all kinds of rendezvous and living history, I am a mere shadow to Francis McGowan, guys. I am in awe of him. And he's still alive. He's my last living mentor. And I still learn something every time I get around that man. But he said, sure, we're going to do this at lunch. You'll start the lunch fire every day to make coffee. Okay? And so the first day he took me out and he showed me what kind of wood, how to tell if this wood is good enough to use or even to try, and etc. And I think it probably took me nearly an hour to get my first coal. And once I had a coal, I had everything else. I could blow it into a fire. And every day at lunch, I would find the resources. I would build the fire to put the coffee pot on, and then I would take the bow drill set that I just made and burn it as part of that fire. Every day I got a new bow drill up from scratch, knew everything from scratch. And on the last day, 7 days that I had done this, as I threw the last one into the fire, Grouch sat there smoking his pipe, looking all dash and debonair, said, well, Blackie, what have you learned about primitive fire? I said, I'll carry a Zippo lighter in my pocket to the day I die. And he said, that's what I learned about it too. So I understand it. I have taught it. I can do it. But down here in my high humidity area, you have a very high failure rate because of just sheer humidity down here, that you'll get a coal going and it'll just right in front of your eyes go out. It's just moisture in the air. So you got a high failure rate. But I'll do a bow drill. If I got to do one, I'll make up a bow drill. Okay, guys, got 4 minutes left. I want to thank y'all all very, very much for tuning into this, especially on football night. I really, really do appreciate. I appreciate all the likes. I appreciate all the stuff, and all of y'all tuning. I got 136 watching right now, which, guys, I'm just tickled to death. What's upcoming? I've got more on the stealth series coming out that's really begun popular, really took off big, and so I greatly thank y'all. I broke 73,000, I think it was, today. Subscribers, thank you very much for that, and I greatly appreciate all y'all's support and all my stuff. There will be a Always number 12 video coming up tomorrow at lunch. Tomorrow on the channel, and then there'll be probably another one next week. Me and Bear are getting together now that it's, thank God, it's September, guys. It's starting to cool off. Oh my God, we had a day that didn't hit 90 today. Wow. And be able to get out and start doing some stuff in the field, and get some camping back in and doing some stuff. I wanted to go camping this week to all the brothers and stuff at the Southeast Bushcraft Base Camp, but health concerns just kept me from going this time, guys. I'm sorry. But I hope to have more coming up here really shortly, and we're going to go do some camping. Well, guys, I'm going to call it quits. Thank y'all, all of y'all, and thank you so very much for tuning in. And we'll be doing this again in the future. So if you got some sort of question you want to ask me that pops up after we got off here, write it down. Next time, I'll try to give you a better head start, and we'll do another one. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie, wishing you safe journeys. Have a great night, guys.